Welcome to the Mama Needs a Moment podcast with your hosts, Chrissy and Cindy, co-founders of Her Plus Health Collective, and moms who understand the chaos of juggling it all. But here's the thing, your well-being matters. That's why we're on a mission to change the way moms take care of themselves. This season, every episode features a roundtable conversation, bringing together trusted experts from different backgrounds to talk about the topics that matter most to moms, creating space for more collaborative whole person care. These episodes are short, meaningful, and easy to fit into real life. You'll hear from our Her Plus expert providers sharing expert insight and real-life tips you can use right away. Learn more about them in our free provider directory linked in the show notes. So take a deep breath, grab your coffee, and let's make these moments count. So let's go ahead and get started with introductions. Latoya, could you hop on and just let everybody hear your voice and what you do?
Yes, thanks so much. I'm Latoya Toller. I'm a mental health therapist. My business is Mindful Counseling Professionals. I work with anxiety, grief, parenting, relationship issues, and I'm also a wellness-centered interior decorator, and my business there is Mindful Home Interiors.
Thanks for having me. So I'm Marianne Brenneman. I'm the owner of Mindful Health and Harmony, and I am a board certified teen and family coach. And I work with families to become more communicative with each other, more centered, more connected, more confident in their relationships.
Hi, my name's Anastasia Aruz, and I am a licensed counselor and a certified coach. And what I like to do is combine both the counseling and the coaching to help parents build emotionally healthy family systems. I specialize in helping parents navigate all kinds of family dynamics while protecting their own well-being and their child's safety.
I'm Irene Googe with Loving Lesson Sleep Solutions, and I help anxious, overwhelmed parents with preschoolers go from exhausted and confident. We pinpoint the root causes of sleep struggles, and we create a personalized plan with respectful sleep strategies.
We're excited to have you all here and to hear all of your wonderful insights on this topic. Thank you so much. Having a blended family, there's all sorts of discussions. You have to talk about boundaries and roles and building new family systems. And that's kind of where I want to lead this right now, is that blended families often mean creating something entirely new while still honoring what existed before. And you had touched on that. Mm-hmm. How do families define roles, responsibilities, and boundaries without forcing relationships or creating confusion for our kids? So I'm going to go into a specific question to you, and there's just so much that I want to ask you, but how do you personally help families understand that they're creating a new family system, and why allowing relationships to develop naturally is often healthier than forcing the connection? So there's that, but I also want to know from your perspective, building a new family system also involves, as you said, perhaps remarrying someone new and drawing them into the whole situation. How does somebody know when to, one, introduce them to the kids? And can you just kind of talk in general about all of this in regard to boundaries, roles, and the new family systems?
Yeah, I think first let me start out by saying, if you're going through this and you're really struggling with it, there are so many resources in regards to getting help out there. So, and if you ever need help from me, I'm definitely someone that can help. But the way I start with a family that's going through this is really making your mindset and framing it as like you're creating something brand new. This has never been done before. You're going to have either two new people coming in or one new person, whatever it is. And we're all coming from different families to begin with. We all have these different rules and ideas in our head of what a family looks like. Plus you have all the emotions of maybe the divorce and people might not be over it. And so really giving yourself grace that you're entering into a very complex time, and you have kids. So they're going to be dealing with all this stuff, but it doesn't have to be all bad. It's really just taking it day by day, thinking about what's happening in the moment. And I think a lot of times just being child-centered, and I'll go back that again, it's always child-focused. And the child has to feel safe and secure, right? And if that child is feeling safe and secure and you are child-focused, really, that's all you can do to help the kids in that situation. I talk a lot about with parents of having that patience, because takes time. It does not just solve itself all at once. I mean, I'm in year 12 right now in a marriage with my husband who had two children before. And we still, it's been a process. We're we're doing good, but it's not always good, right? I didn't always, my husband's ex-wife didn't always love me coming into the middle of this family that just had broken up. And so I had to check myself and get my feelings under control of like, this is between me and that person, not between anyone else. And so really understanding that even if you're coming into this relationship, you're now part of it. You're part of that divorce. You're part of all of those things. And it can be very complicated. And so having people to talk to, making sure that you're giving yourself a lot of grace if you don't know what to do, and just being grounded within yourself and just taking time to know that this is definitely a long-term process that can be really, really fun, but then have really, really challenging times because there's so many emotions that go into it. And I know you said about like when to introduce the kids. Like, I think it's really important. It's something that you're comfortable with, and sometimes the other person, but it might not be because they might not even be happy you're dating anyone at all. So just making sure it's somebody that is consistent, predictable, somebody that's going to be safe for your kids, and not safe in a way that they're going to hurt them, but just safe, emotionally safe, that they're not going to be having to attach to someone new if you're going to go and find somebody else next week. It's really that attachment piece of like, you don't want your kids to have all these different relationships, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Anastasia. I think there's so much to unpack there. And you used one word that I loved. That was fun. And that's not something we typically think about in these scenarios, but I have seen examples. I have seen situations where that is the case. And obviously, it's not going to happen every time, but it is something to work towards. I mean, as a possibility. I am fully aware it might not be in every situation.
Do you love our real, unfiltered conversations on motherhood? Help us keep them going.
By becoming a patron, you're not just helping us keep the podcast going, you're fueling meaningful conversations, supporting moms, and helping us bring on even more incredible expert guests. Plus, you'll get access to exclusive perks like behind-the-scenes content, bonus episodes, and a deeper connection to our Her Health Collective community.
Join us today and be part of something special, because every mom deserves a moment. Let's make sure we can keep creating them together.
I would love to turn to Latoya. Latoya, when roles and parenting styles differ between households, I've talked about this with several moms in our community who are in this situation. And, one house is very strict and restrictive, and one is more laid back and go with the flow, and anything can happen. And that can create some situations, that can create some struggles. How can families navigate those differences while still presenting a sense of structure and emotional safety for the children?
So yes, parents often do have differences in terms of their parenting style. And, oftentimes we parent the way that we were parented. And a lot of times we think we're doing it the right way, whether or not that, is always the case. But we think we're doing it the very best that we can. So I think it's important not to create another situation that can be a battle, but really to focus on what can be a compromise, what can really highlight what we're trying to do best for supporting our children. And I think some of the really important pieces are, how do we do that in a way that, again, it is consistent in terms of how we share information, how we talk with our child, how we participate in events that are happening in their life, how we look at consequences, or even, rules and expectations. So I think oftentimes being able to agree to maintain schedules is something that can be really useful between the households. So can we have schedules that are as uniform as possible? So, it could be looking at when homework's done, when we have dinner as a family, when is bedtime, how much electronic use. For example, one parent might say, let them use their cell phone for as long as they want, no restrictions. And another parent might say, I want you to have your phone for 1 hour a day. That's a pretty big divide. So could we meet in the middle in terms of, okay, maybe after you've done your homework, you can have 4 hours of time on their phone, and we'll take it back at bedtime. So really trying to find a situation that is not going to create what we would consider a damaging circumstance for the child that can also foster compromise. So you're not really focusing on kind of, tearing at each other in terms of you're wrong and I'm right. Again, that will inspire a lot of confidence for the child that, okay, I can still have a relationship with both mom and dad if mom and dad can get to some place where there is, again, some cooperation together. Not everything can be aligned, but if at all possible, really kind of thinking about how that makes a difference for the child, for, the family structure, trying to create as much common ground as possible. I think also just having these rules of conduct. I think it was mentioned earlier about, maybe there are certain things that we will say to each other in front of the kids. There's some things that we will only discuss when the children aren't present. So there are some things that we recognize we have more disagreement on around this particular thing. And so some things can really best support more flexibility to reduce some tension. I think in working with families, so one of the things that I've used at times is really this idea of once you're separated or going through that process, really thinking of it as a business agreement. And we're in the business of raising our children successfully so that they know that we're there for them, we're available to them. So it might be maybe mom and dad hop on a call once a month or twice a month to go over the specifics. Maybe we have an agenda, which is, we're going to talk about the upcoming doctor's appointments, the holiday schedule, the parent-teacher meetings, coordinating certain things. And then when we're done having the conversation, maybe we document it. Maybe there's an email that we send to each other that, again, supports us each having accountability. This is what I said I would do. This is what you said you would do. And that is something that you can both refer to. And it creates a timeline, again, about what's happening and how often things need to happen. So it can feel a little challenging at first to go from what feels like an emotional relationship to maybe a more business type relationship, but I think it can be effective when there have been a lot of maybe heightened emotions that are involved to keep things a bit more neutral and focused on the needs of the children.
Thank you, LaToya. So much useful information that you provided in there. And as we wrap up this discussion on boundaries and new family systems, I do have one question that I was hoping we could elaborate slightly on. And going back to Anastasia, when you were talking about your experience about I think it was your stepfather, maybe having drinking problems and the honesty that was given to you about being unable to ride with him and all of that. My question is about balancing the age appropriate discussions on how to know how much to give information to give your children, because obviously when they're younger, it's going to be different than when they're older. So how do you balance that with honesty? And then how do you effectively communicate between the separate households that is the way that you're communicating with each other, especially if there's conflict? I can see that being very difficult.
Yeah, it's hard. I think it needs to be a boundary set, right? So I think the parents need to set that boundary if that's what they feel. If they don't want something to happen, they have something they definitely don't want, it needs to be set in writing, either through text, email, through courts, whatever it is. And then age appropriate, it's really going to be sharing as much information as your child can handle. And when I say that, the kids will ask you questions that they can handle, right? So say the conversation goes, you're supposed to go to your dad's tonight. He's not going to pick you up. Your stepmom is. Why? Because he is not home right now, or he is out at a restaurant. He is out, whatever. He can't do it. So that in itself is being honest, because you're saying she's picking you up. You're not really getting into why. Now, maybe you do want to tell the child why. He's had too much to drink, so she's going to pick you up instead of him because I don't want you driving. And either one of those conversations can be fine, because those are both sharing information in a way that is honest, and the kid's not going to feel that weird energy. I think the biggest thing, and when I say that, it's because I've worked with so many kids over the years in this situation. they start second guessing themselves. And when you start second guessing yourself of not understanding what's happening in a system or a family, you get a ton of anxiety because you start thinking you're crazy. Like, and they don't know that. They don't know they're getting anxiety and thinking something's wrong, but they're like not understanding why people are acting a certain way and not understanding why no one's telling them. And they get scared to ask because they're a child. They just don't even know what to ask. They just feel that there's something off, and they don't know how to deal with it. And so I spend a lot of times with kids and parents just trying to eliminate that feeling of not knowing or not understanding, because the anxiety is then what gets created if you have things happening in your home, even if it's conflict, right? Like, say you could be fighting with your current spouse or fighting with your new spouse, whatever it is, that child knows it's happening because they can feel it. And so even stating, yeah, we just had an argument, it probably didn't sound great, or maybe that had made you had a really hard feeling, or whatever it may be. And when you're talking to kids, you're not going to ever share information that they don't really want to know. And they'll ask you what they want to know, and then you just stop right there. You don't keep elaborating. You don't need to keep giving details. That's when things get kind of messy, or that's when things get where that's when the lines become very blurred. So it's really just listening to them, seeing what they want to know, and just answering that very directly and simply.
Yes, thank you so much, Anastasia. When co-parenting includes high conflict, unresolved hurt, or mental health challenges, it can feel incredibly hard to stay regulated and child focused. What helps families create emotional safety for kids when adults are struggling, especially across multiple households? And I'm going to turn this to Anastasia because I know you have a lot of experience in this area. You've worked extensively with families navigating high conflict divorce and mental illness, things like bipolar disorder. How can parents hold boundaries and remain respectful of the other parent, even when there's this anger and pain and mental illness, without sacrificing their own well-being or their child's emotional safety?
A huge shout out to our Patreon subscribers. Your support truly means the world to us. Thanks to you, we are able to continue the weekly production of Mama Needs a Moment and getting this valuable information from these incredible guests out to you, our listeners. This final question has been recorded as a bonus and is available for our Patreon subscribers to go listen to right now. Be sure to log into your Patreon account and have a listen. If you're not a subscriber, we'd love to have you. The link is in the show notes. Thank you very much for the time that you've spent with us today and the information and the knowledge that you've shared with our community. It's been wonderful to spend this time with you. Thank you so much.
That's a wrap. You carved out a few moments just for yourself, and that's a big deal.
We understand that time is limited, but we've got your back, which is why we keep these episodes short, sweet, and packed with goodness.
Don't miss a thing. Hit the follow button so you're always the first to know when a new episode drops. If you had as much fun as we did, let us know by leaving a review.
And remember to let other moms know that we're here doing motherhood alongside you. Grateful to share a few moments taking care of you.